Welcome to Gallant Conversations. Gallant is a business-to-business consultancy specializing in industrial innovation.
We drive growth for our clients through strategies and insights in brand management and strategic communications.
If you're in an industry focused on progress at the macro level, we're here to facilitate a conversation, starting now.
Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Junaid Ali, CEO of Prismecs. Junaid, welcome.
Thank you, James.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. I know you have a lot of fascinating, interesting, groundbreaking projects that you have working on, and I just want to dive right in. And, I think the first question I really want to bring up to you, Junaid, is can you just first off just brief us and tell us a little bit more about Prismecs and the vision that drives the company?
Thank you, James, for the question. Prismecs essentially is a business which is geared toward a distributed energy business, especially in the fast track energy environment. The concept is very simple, with where we are innovating the ideas of how to take power to the users in the most economical and fascinating way.
That's fantastic. And I'm just kind of curious, how does the vision of Prismecs interrelate with your personal philosophy and the mission of it as well?
Well, I mean, my personal philosophy of just coming over to the U.S. as an international student, to just collaborating, cooperating, learning the new ideas, and just rehashing them with a new thought process is the soul heart and soul of Prismecs as well. I'm applying the same philosophy of how can we aggregate different technologies and stack them together and just go after individual market sector, because one size is not going to fit all over here.
Yeah, and imagine, and you have a global footprint as well with Prismecs, both
Yes,
personally and professionally, I would say.
exactly. Yeah. So I have had the pleasure of working in quite a lot of countries, and then we have instilled the same mentality within Prismecs as well. Sort of, I joke with the team that we have the Navy SEALs mentality, that we will just go and work anywhere in the world. And, that's just the testament of our work, where we have worked in some of the toughest and hostile environments too.
And a Navy SEAL mentality is desperately needed, I would say, for that.
That is correct. That is
Yeah.
correct. Yes, yes.
And, one thing that I kind of want to dive into is, you were kind of mentioning a little bit about distributed power, and, our conversations and discussions in the past has been kind of talking about it's being a cornerstone of the modern energy strategy. Can you kind of like dive a little bit deeper and explain why this is such a critical area for Prismecs?
It is very critical because, obviously, just looking back, maybe a decade ago, the growth in the population, there's the new emerging economies, there was this whole Africa effect at the time, where there was a lot of focus. But then in that focus, there was a lot of sort of the defocus more on the more established economies, which were just bumping down a lot of renewable business. And then the world just did not catch that growth with the base load power. So essentially, without getting too much technical, it has left a uh, big gap between the supply and demand, because obviously, you must have heard the sun doesn't shine every day and the wind doesn't blow, kind of a thing, right? So that is one of those reasons where the energy demand gap increased. But then, with the advent of the blockchain, edge computing, artificial intelligence, the new pharma world, and on top of it, if you look at it, the cities are also moving vertically, instead of more suburban based life. So people are flocking more toward where the industrialization is. So that requires a lot of power.
Of course, and it kind of better illustrates in a sense the need for that distributed power approach, especially with the vertical component to it.
Yes.
And one thing that I kind of want to, you know, you were kind of talking about intermittent renewable sources like solar, wind, battery technology, and then also you mentioned baseload power. Like, what type of baseload power options are you kind of most interested in, or kind of have a fascination for, and looking to integrate within kind of your company?
No, that's a very valid question. I think, James, our biggest footprint and forte is obviously the gas power.
Mhm.
Traditional gas power, again, using some of the fast track, more agile machinery out there to deliver power in record time. But on top of it, as I mentioned, that since we are technology savvy and stacking the technology based on verticals, we are also looking into waste to energy element as well. And waste to power is one of our major collaboration inside. We are also gearing up and looking into the biofuel, which will be very much needed to the replacement of the coal industry in that sense. So those are in addition to what we are used to doing.
Yeah, and I mean, I really kind of want to stay on this topic because you're bringing up a lot of great insight here, and we're talking about gas, and I'm curious, kind of with the LNG component to it, is that something that you look into in terms of distribution and logistics?
100%, 100%. So the other side of the coin is when you decentralize the power, what we call electron itself, you have to match it to a molecule as well, right? So the pipelines, just like electrical wires and poles, don't go everywhere, sorry. The pipelines are not going everywhere as well. So that, if you think about it, before the distributed power, the distributed gas delivery came into effect. And we have seen the effect of that happening in Permian for the last, 7 or 10 years. And that actually turn into more electrification of all the work going on in Permian. So similarly, yes, we when we talk about distributed power, the word we use, distributed energy, actually encompasses the LNGs and the CNG, the fuel cycle as well.
And I just want to stay on this one little bit on the LNG gas component before we get into some other
Sure.
stuff. But you have kind of these publicly traded companies now really getting hit with I guess market volatility and pressures and stuff like that with various different stakeholders. There was that one group, Telluride here in Houston. That seem to have some really interesting kind of ways in which you can distribute and kind of manage the LNG processing and distribution component of it. What are your thoughts in terms of that? Because it seemed like they had a lot of great traction. They were getting a lot of great momentum. It seemed like Shell and big player industries were very interested. Where do you think that type of model, the Telluride model or Driftwood project or what have you, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so that's again a good question. I mean, just like the delivery of fuel within within the U.S. is based on delivering LNG, the similar marine industry then delivers that LNG over to different countries. But the ultimate usage of that fuel is incorporated for the production of power plants and power in general as well. So as the economies are, for example, I mean, I'll just give you an example just to make it very concise. Indonesia, for example, is one of those regions where they're importing a lot of LNG from the U.S. or the US based companies, and Asia is importing a lot of it. And a lot of it is actually being consumed to deliver power in Indonesia.
Okay. And the other point, we talked about waste to energy, and then we were talking about some molecules and, all that stuff. And I'm just curious about, there is another set of pieces or momentum in terms of the waste to energy movement and that type of technology. And it's kind of a biotech kind of play. I'm just curious with sustainable aviation fuel, if you want to kind of speak to that or have some other added thoughts on kind of the biology component or the biotech and all that great groundbreaking work happening.
Yeah, so it again boils down to the word, the energy, right? It's sustainable energy, the resilience of energy systems, delivery to the users and consumers, scalability. When you look at some of these things, these are not just buzzwords. This is the energy fortification, right? So the energy fortification we have to actually attack that problem from various angles, and waste to energy is one of them. If you look at um, World Bank global forums, uh, Sweden is in fact leading in that technology, and we are partnering with some cutting edge technology as well, where we could actually, take that MSW, which is the solid waste, and you convert that into either a syngas, or you convert that into pelletized coal, which is sort of like green coal, and then you can burn that and then produce energy through steam process. So it's very much needed, because uh, waste disposal is a big problem all over the world as well. The other question you ask about the sustainable aviation fuel, which is derivatives, of course, is the biofuels and stuff like that. It's needed. The airlines are running the same. Um, they have the same agendas in carbon footprint reduction and things of that nature. And the skyrocketing fares at this point are all driven by expensive fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So innovation in that industry is happening, and we are growing in those industries, because all of these industries require what? They require power to run the process.
Yes. And that other kind of component. So we're talking about gas, LNG, and all of that kind of component in the energy landscape. We've kind of touched on these emerging technologies using synthetic biology or biotech solutions and stuff of that nature. The waste to energy approach and the green coal. And then, there are those other baseload power sources with, hydrogen, which has some interconnectedness with kind of what you were referring to with the waste to energy approach. And then on top of that, you have, nuclear and geothermal, which has been discussed for quite some time, but it seems like now there's been, again, added momentum to help support these technologies. And I'm curious kind of what you see that fitting into on the baseload power side of things, but also the overall general landscape as well.
Yeah, James. So imagine a world where you have this crop which can be used to, um, could be harvested in any part of the world, and then you take that and then you convert that into sustainable aviation fuel or a SAF, right? So to your question, it would take ages to take utility power over there, to run the traditional poles and wires and cables, right? And then set up a power plant and then figure out a fuel system for that. Whereas when you look at it, you are actually, think about it, where you have a fuel which is there, and you run that fuel through the power infrastructure locally, which is fast enough. We won't get into the economics and the costs and all that, but the big picture thing is that it's a circular economy. You take your fuel, you run your power, you deliver that fuel, convert it into something else. So this is something, the sustainability and scalability of power we are talking about.
Yeah, and I was asking all those follow-up questions, and
to your point though about the nuclear and some of those things, again, decentralized power is the big thing, because the momentum of industrial decentralization is pushing the envelope at the moment. Utilities, electrical utilities, gas utilities cannot cope up as fast because they are huge infrastructures. So even if you need to make a small change, you have to do analysis, which could take, literally years to get to that point.
mm-hmm. No, and I wanted you to really kind of explain the whole general landscape of the energy transition and kind of what is available today and what's being discussed, and kind of feed that back into Prismecs' approach and your approach to the energy, or specifically distributed power, and how it's evolved over time.
It's evolved. I mean, if you think about it, back in the 90s, the whole independent power phenomena was brought in. IPPs were a lot in fashion. but at that time they were just more there to strengthen the gaps between supply and demand. So, taking a page from the same playbook, the idea is that, you know, why do we wait for power to be built and then we grow with it? Why don't we just build our own power plant?
Hmm.
So it's the concept of bring your own power kind of a thing, right? So in essentially the oil and gas business traditionally, if you think about it, literally a decade ago, they had no interest in power. They were just getting the power from utilities, but they have evolved over time, even in our backyard, and they own equipment which produces power. So owning that equipment. So what Prismecs is doing is that we are just actually elevating that whole concept of, okay, you are not a power company. You desire to have power. We are the people who will run your power plants. We will bring solutions to you. So we will own your power plant. We will operate your power plant. We will maintain your power plant. And we will just give you a turnkey service.
Yeah. And with all that being said, key partnerships and collaborations are critical in terms of being able to stand something up like that, in my mind. And correct me when I'm
Absolutely.
wrong,
Yeah.
but I would be curious, and I'm sure others would be curious about kind of how have you collaborated with industry giants like maybe a GE Vernova, and you have a global footprint. Can you share some insights into how these partnerships have influenced your projects and innovations?
Yeah. So obviously, G Vernova is one of our hallmark relationship. In many ways, obviously, I've been trained through that same school of delivering power, and when it comes to the power delivery and power infrastructure, there is no better name than G Vernova globally, right? They own 50% of the equipment which is producing power right now in the globe. So servicing them, partnering with them in their distributed aero division, or just helping them, supporting them has been truly fascinating. In many levels. I mean, they have strengthened us, they have grown us in many ways, and there are various relationships like that within Prismecs when it comes to different equipment manufacturers or clients alike. Our clients have actually strengthened us as well by listening to them, or by even giving them innovative ideas as well.
Yeah, and I feel like you have strengthened us as well. It's just that kind of collaborative, key partnerships, seeking those right people, right?
Yes.
To kind of help propel you and others,
Yeah.
to that next step. And that kind of dives into, you know, my other question, which was, what qualities do you look for in a partner to ensure a successful collaboration? You've been in some serious, parts of the world, like with Tetra Tech and the Ukrainian project. I don't know if you want to kind of enlighten us a little bit more on the Ukrainian project with Tetra Tech and kind of the general landscape of how that all occurred. But, again, what are those types of partnerships with qualities to ensure a successful collaboration?
Yeah, look, I mean, Tetra Tech project was a very good one, especially working in Ukraine and on what's going on right now, or what was going on last year. The grid stability is a big issue. Obviously, there is none at the moment. So the rebuilding of power infrastructure in Ukraine was a challenge, right? So not many people would have the desire to go work in Ukraine under active situation of war. So we were lucky enough to get that opportunity. And again, thanks to our friends at GE and Tetra Tech, and we listened to the call, and we mobilized, and we delivered power over there.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that whole sense of collaboration, the whole idea of get it done, the Navy SEAL mentality, which I referred to at the beginning, that has actually, and that is all part of our DNA as well, by the way, right? It's not, we don't take risks, or unattended risks, but we do measure ourselves before we, send someone in. We are very centric to the fact that, there are people and they have families in the back.
Yeah.
So it's again coming back from the whole training aspect of working with large corporations in the past, which has give us that whole health, safety, and environmental information to keep along with our delivery structure. Yeah.
And that brings up kind of the challenges in the energy sector right now. We're here in Houston, Texas, right now, and over the past month we've had two just out of the
Yeah,
blue
look at
storms,
that, right?
right?
Yeah.
And the first one just completely knocked us off our feet, and then
Yep.
the second one kind of was just like, oh, stay down. So the energy sector again is facing these significant challenges. There's issues with electric grids arising from severe weather events, be it during with the winter with the Arctic blasts or the blizzards, or summer during heat waves or tornadoes and hurricanes. From your perspective, what are the most pressing issues, and how is Prismecs addressing them?
Yeah, so just a great resilience, as you mentioned, was tested many times, and every time it gets tested, I don't want to get into the details of it. You're hundreds of home without power for so many days, and so again, that whole concept of the fact that how do we get the power back online, at how quick, what are the shortages, how do we make sure that there is enough power available, other than this whole environmental issues you talked about, James. I mean, we have this infamous duck curve, which everybody kind of talks about, where the energy prices go down below zero, and in the nighttime, and that also causes a lot of congestion. Without getting again into too much technical discussions, uh, when you have so much power available and there's nobody to consume it, you got to do something with it, right? So what do? You're just basically you just somehow store it, or just, but the same power is flowing through your poles and wires and cables. So this is another, so grid infrastructure, grid strengthening, grid firming, forming. These are some technical terms, but without getting into it, those are the things what people just don't realize, that those are also problems. Or sometimes having too much power is a problem too. So that's what in some of the areas which is happening. And so Prismecs together with their partners are trying to, or at the forefront of each of these problem domains.
Mhm.
So distributed power essentially also strengthens the grid.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I have some added thoughts on that, and we'll kind of pause it, because I kind of wanted to get your perspective on what do you see the role in technology overcoming these challenges. You've alluded to it, but you do have that global footprint, and I'm curious to see if there is any variance within the markets or regions that you service, and should there even be a variance, right? Like is it yeah, should there even be a variance in that case, or is it a necessity based off of the other challenges happening within those markets and those regions itself?
No, they are very region centric. Obviously, there are regulatory compliances. There are non-regulatory areas. So globally speaking, power itself is regulated in many of the countries. But again, that doesn't spare you from the challenges, right? The regulations are, in fact, in some cases, tend to be the bane over here, the problem, right? You cannot move that quick, but now you have a lot of processes to go through. So energy security concept is big now as well because of that, right? So there are regulations, we cannot go outside of it. So how do you put together another set of power infrastructure is a completely different understanding overseas, inside the US versus areas where there's no regulation, right? um, Talking about Texas, for instance, on that for because of that reason, there are some emergency funds now been resurrected to strengthen the grid, because everybody realized their ERCOT has a problem, and we have to resolve it. But to that point, the individual users, the industrial users have come to conclusion that while there are challenges in the utilities and the grid systems, they cannot wait for for the grid to fix itself, so they get to start their business. So that's why the approach is, in fact, to be honest, you talked about the international aspect of it. I was in Ireland, and one of the big thing the EU is doing, especially Ireland, is that the data centers over there are working directly with utilities now. So they are coming together and thinking, okay, what if I need 100 megawatt in 3 years, and I need to go, 5, 10, 15, 20 megawatts every year. The utilities are telling them, all right, you just put your 100 megawatt, even if your data center isn't there, but put that, because you have to have that investment in place anyway, and then do the what we call net metering. So basically export the power to the utilities. So it's that collaboration which is needed to resolve. You will see that a lot of, as we grow more in edge computing, the GPU processing, and all that, this whole concept of blockchain, you will see that a lot of gas companies will turn out to be electric power companies, because it will just be easier for them to distribute their gas to a power plant versus they're selling their gas to old utilities. And so it's a very, very interesting dynamics at the moment.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm so happy that you brought up data centers. I think that is something that is a growing increase in terms of demand, in terms of our electrical grid, and then just I don't think that the consumption of data is leaving us anytime soon. I mean, we have the EV sector. We're 100% reliant on kind of these autonomous systems and full autonomy with all these data processing that's happening on the back end. So I'm curious. You brought up that one point, which is when it's nighttime during the evening, and the sun is down or the power usage is kind of going down, like during those long those periods of where we're not using that much power, and then you kind of turn into the data center approach, and they are constantly in my mind consuming electricity or energy. So I'm just kind of curious a little bit more on you kind of explaining the data center model and the distributed power component to it. And we've talked about having data centers underneath like in the ocean, on the ocean floor. We've talked about having them on the moon. We've had them talk about it in space and orbit, like because there's a lot of electricity needs, right? And part of that is with power associated heating and cooling. So I'm curious again on the data center side of things and the distributed power specifically, kind of how could that be addressed? You mentioned Ireland, and I'm sure there's a lot of other places out there.
Yeah, so you have to look at the resiliency in the data center world, right? So if you talk to someone who's from this domain, they will tell you when it comes to power delivery, the performance and availability guarantees are super tight. I mean, it has to be 99.999%. So what we call is like 5 nines, right? The infamous 5 9. So it has to be that. But I mean, how do you get that? You get that by having utility, then then you add that resiliency by adding a backup generator, and then you strengthen that by adding battery storage or UPSs. This was the traditional way. Now, this all worked as long as utilities were able to cope up with the demand, and the power was just a cost to the data centers, right? And they by code, they were supposed to have standby generators, which typically speaking, in most of the cases, were diesel. Because when you're a standby and you just got to run it, maybe once a week, you're not just causing any pollution or carbon issues. But now this whole paradigm is shift. The utilities cannot cope up with it. So we are looking. We are, just because Prismecs is a premier operation, maintenance, service level business, we took up the challenge and we said, look, we're gonna introduce a product into the market where we can give that sort of resiliency by bringing different types of solutions, and then we can run the power plant behind the data center 24/7 because of our abilities of running these large power plants 24/7, right? So it all boils down to that. How do we and again, data centers are not going to wait, right? and we will deliver that and wait in the anticipation of the utilities to come. And when they come, then we will then connect these generators back onto the grid. So it will strengthen the grid as the grid grows as well.
And, you know, I think there's been some discussion in terms of, you know, the gaming sector inside of the things in terms of data processing and stuff. And now that you have these gaming hubs, it's that are kind of developing. I think in Saudi Arabia, there's a city called Niam, if I'm not
Yeah, that is
mistaken.
correct. Yes.
And I'm just kind of curious with that region or that market and that, I guess activity or that specific service pertaining to kind of these gaming hubs and centers that are requiring a lot of, you know, electricity and energy to, you know, have high speed internet, so on and so forth. I mean, what do you look for? What
Yeah,
is
so Saudi, Middle East is a big market for us. We are in that region where we are working on. We are actively engaged on a couple of our projects over there. So Saudi, UAE, Kuwait, Oman is a truly fascinating, and Qatar, for example. Saudi, especially now, because they are getting a lot of these new industrial, what we call revolution, where the cars are being built in Saudi, and then they are building a lot of localized parts, and even when it comes to the power infrastructure as well. So the idea is that you are making these industries more smarter by bringing the data centers, the edge computing to these factory floors, so the latency goes down, and then there's more of information coming and processing quite faster, right? Without getting into too much detail. So to your point, whether it's the gaming hubs, whether it's the new industrial cities, uh, they all are looking for a common solution. I don't think fuel is a problem, but Saudi is also putting some large infrastructure for fueling some of these growth centers as well.
yeah, and you know, we're talking a lot about kind of innovation and all these technologies that are interrelated within distributed power side, and then also indirectly related, right? So, you know, I kind of want to touch on because we've also been giving out a lot of kind of technical terms in respect to sustainability, resilience, firming, you know, grid security and stuff like that is, in my mind, interrelated with sustainability efforts.
Yeah.
You know, it's an incredibly critical aspect of your business model. Um, can you kind of discuss some of the innovative solutions that Prismex is developing to promote sustainable energy?
Uh, well, the sustainability word is very loaded, right? But again, what we are trying to do is when we think of sustainability, as I said, one of those things, what we're doing, we're not just focused on one technology. We are focused on multiple technologies. So that's one thing. We are servicing various type of power projects, so it's not just focused on one. We have innovated the whole e-commerce supply chain through our other business called e-industrify. We are adding a lot of tools internally to use. um
I think that's good.
we are adding a lot of tools, especially the AI, to recruit people quicker, screen people quicker, and give them a unified platform where they can come and work on larger projects and just be globally deployed. We are innovating to a point where we have collaborations with the companies where we could be the employment of record virtually anywhere in the world, which is truly fascinating. So again, based on my personal background and experience and working globally, I built this great network of collaboration, which essentially is now helping us grow. That's the fuel of the business as well.
Yeah, and I want you to just kind of reiterate some of the points which you know you kind of highlighted, right? Where, and then correct me when I'm wrong too, because I see Prismix, you know, as being that distributed power service company in a sense. I know y'all handle a lot of other stuff, and
Yeah.
then you just introduced those two other brands under your Prismix brand family, which is e-industrify, kind of helping address the supply chain,
Hmm.
which is a sustainability kind of, you know, ingrained, embedded approach. I mean, and the recruit me
That is correct.
aspect as
Yeah.
well, in terms of providing opportunity for folks localized or around the world to, empower them with opportunity to be employed in jobs and stuff of that nature.
So James, yeah, that's call to action, right? Essentially, we are calling the market with this innovative industrial B2B marketplace is to one, strengthen the industrial supply chain to be unified, remove the barriers, remove the gray matter out of it, so that the buyers could just be connected to the sellers, and then we, as a service company at Prismecs, we could just actually take those products and put them where they belong in that value chain. So that's one part. And then the whole concept of Recruit Me is again, screening the right people at the right time for the right situation. Which again, as I keep on saying, that without innovation, we will not be able to overcome some of these challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And having our own internal intelligent team is actually a major driving force to deliver these things.
Yeah. So you're leveraging these companies that you've created under the Prismecs brand for yourself, and then vice versa. Correct me when I'm wrong, but leveraging them for yourself and your operations to continue kind of this global footprint. But on top of that, you're providing that same service for those that are wanting to tap into those specific regions and markets.
Yes, correctly.
So, what role and impact do you believe, if we're going to stay kind of on the distributed power side, in terms of achieving the global sustainability goals?
Global sustainability goal. I would think that to me, everywhere we are helping reduction of carbon is a big checkbox for us. So because that's how the, and then again, just using the localized resources. I mean, James, that's the most important aspect of it. The sustainability word is actually you do something and you keep on doing it, right? So the essence of taking the localized resources, whether they are industrial, whether they're commercial, or resources when we talk about humans, developing them, training them, that plays a big role into the localized sustainability of those projects. We cannot, for example, we cannot just build a power project in Zanzibar. I'm just taking that name, right?
Cool place.
And then bring people from Texas to run it for the next 25 years, right? It's not sustainable business. So we have to bring these new technologies closer to the users, closer to where the demand is, and then train the local supply chain, local resources to keep that project or keep that momentum going.
It's essentially, in a very grotesque way, it's a farm to table approach. In a
It
sense,
is. It is. It
right?
is. Yeah. Yeah. It is. But those are some real challenges. I mean, these are not something, everybody is aware of them, and so as we, and we are just doing our part of fair share of effort to deliver something. And this is that innovation in us, which has enabled us to grow so fast in the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I think the power of Prismecs and your family of brands can really kind of tackle some of these issues pertaining to, technological advancement, sustainability, and environmental stewardship. Alongside that, empowering individuals within the local community, rising up to the global impact. And I'm just curious on the future of energy and looking ahead. What are your predictions for the energy industry's future, particularly in distributed power? And we can talk about the supply chain and the human aspect of it as well. And the other thing that I want to bring up is kind of the SAFs, the sustainable
Yeah.
aviation fuels, and the biotech technology and the waste to energy component, right?
Yeah. Well, predictability, of course. I'm just gonna mention to what I know and what I can tell. Completely, if you were to just look for the supply chain issues, and if you're just trying to get something manufactured, built, at least in the power delivery standpoint, infrastructure standpoint, you're looking at essentially 2 to 3 years, right? So that 2 to 3 years is what people think that gap is gonna be fixed. To me, it's just the tip of the iceberg, to be honest, because the money flowing into the AI, the advancement of machine learning, the IoTs of the world is far outstripping the money flowing into the new pharma is far outstripping the money coming into the utilities. So if you look at the last orders of, for example, Boeing or Airbus, Indigo is ordered 400 planes, right? They need clean fuels, but those are the same machines which are helping grow the whole distributed power model as well. Yes, there are technologies which are far better, leaner, which could be employed as well. But as I said, you're just looking at that whole infrastructure growth, James, is completely insane at the moment.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, right? And again, I'd be open to, again, the interpretation of what I'm hearing is, in some aspects, it's super exciting. We have all this awesome technology. We're living in an incredible time, although there's a lot of harsh realities
Hmm.
taking place alongside it. And it appears as if, in some aspects, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, right? In respect to, okay, yes, we want to develop all this AI to help kind of, progress forward, but at
Yeah.
the same time, you're now hindering the ability to actually execute or activate that AI development because we do not have the utility infrastructure in place or the localized talent or the supply chain resources to help support that future. Is that kind of a
That is correct. I mean, just to round it off, people are not going to stop baking the cake, right? Just because there's a particular ingredient that's not available. So we are that company which brings that ingredient to the table and help the baker bake it.
Mhm.
So it's very simple. It's not rocket science. Uh, so we can just sit over here all day and talk about, oh, shortage this, shortage that, but somebody's got to sell the plane, somebody's got to fly the plane, somebody's got to sell the AI, somebody's got to do all of that. So how do we do it? We just not. We are, as power people, we, as an expert, as power people, wouldn't be on the sideline sitting and saying, okay, somebody else is going to solve the problem. So I am pushing myself in these forums, in these discussions, to be part of that story and tell them that, we as power people could be innovative as well. So that's the punchline for us. How do we do it smarter, quicker, better? How do we look at alternative resources? How do we think about, producing power in one part of the town and then taking it to the other part of the town? Because we can do it faster, we can do it more nimbler. So does that make sense, James?
yes, of course. No.
I'm just trying to tell the community that there are smart people in power industry as well.
Mhm. No, I'm go figure, right? I mean, shoot. No, no. So, and with all that said, I mean, is there any kind of recent project that kind of exemplifies Prismic's impact on the energy sector and the community? Kind of what we've been describing.
Yeah, well, because you use the word community, I'll just say that we have been very lucky that we are working on a project in Greece where we were tasked to move a 180 megawatt uh, power plant from one part of Greece to the other part of the Greece, completely a different island, and put it together. And we dismantled it in less than 2 months, and now we're going to put it back together in less than 6 months or a year to a new place where there is a lot of tourism growth is in Greece. So again, you just got to follow where the demand is. So power is going to go where the demand is.
So you're just like breaking apart a Lego.
Break apart, yeah,
and then
Lego,
put it
and just
back.
take it exactly
It's
that.
like I'm going to my
exactly
mom's
that.
house now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that whole infrastructure in place enables us to do these things way quicker than our competition.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I mean, to that point, I mean, are there any lessons that have been learned on that?
And I will also
Okay.
add to the point that we are actively pursuing all the tribal work, because we are an 8A business, and we're pursuing those opportunities fairly closely, and even taking the knowledge into that infrastructure as well.
And is
So
that
very fascinating.
yeah? And I mean, with the Greek project or with the tribal communities and stuff like that, and that's a very sensitive, I think, community to tap into.
That is correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, what lessons are you learning from these projects that can be applied for, future initiatives or what have you?
Again, I mean, the lessons are very simple. Listen to your client, listen to the demand curves, be innovative.
And then take that SEAL mentality.
Exactly. Yeah, you just gotta be the doer. You just can't sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, and do you think that would be kind of your call to action or your message that you want to send out to your peers in the energy sector?
Yeah, the message is very simple. We are open. We are open to discuss. We are open to collaborate. We will share the knowledge and bring the products what you have. Let's put this, as you mentioned, the whole Lego box. So put every piece of Lego in the box, whether it's from fuel to delivery of electron, and then let's just take it to the industry and tell them that we are ready.
That's great. No, that's awesome. And one final point that I want to just bring up, in terms of that and bringing everybody to the box, and you have all these other players kind of in place, how could they all collectively work together toward a more resilient future? What are your thoughts?
That's a loaded question. Right?
I
mean, egos aside, right? It's if we just remove the whole competitive landscape and turn more into the collaborative side of it, and which we believe we are agnostic. We are a service company first versus a manufacturing company. So we don't really, but we do again. We bring these OEMs together. As I said, the whole Lego box mentality. For us, these are pieces of Legos, and we just put them together, and we pride ourselves in making sure that the end product is good for the user. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's again, maybe I've said this word many times. Collaboration is not just a buzzword. We are actually living by it.
No, that's great. And Junaid, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. It's been quite fascinating conversation and discussion, and I wish we had more time to kind of dive in deeper to some of this stuff, but I very much look forward to seeing where Prismecs continues its growth, and love to just continue that conversation another time.
Thank you, James, for your time today. Yes, love talking to you.
Thanks for joining this conversation with Gallant.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained meaningful insight.
If you find this entertaining or helpful, subscribe and leave us a review.
And don't forget to share this conversation with your network.
For more resources and to stay updated with Gallant Insights and our amazing client portfolio companies, visit gallantculture.com.
Join us next time as we continue to explore perspectives within the industrial innovation space propelling us forward.
Until then, we ask you to stay thoughtful and curious.